So I asked my kids if they've eaten that morning, if they need anything to wear, or need to brush their teeth or comb their hair. We usually spend about the first hour of our morning getting ready for our day to learn. I feel like as educators we're sort of the first responders.
And you've taken in 2 foster kids. You have 2.
So I just gave you a little bit of idea that, that's a modern teacher with a modern classroom, and she's spending the first hour of her day getting her students ready, and that's kind of what Young pursued in the 1920s. There are major differences, obviously. Elementary schools in general don't have 70 plus students in one classroom. That's kind of, usually we keep it 20, 25 at the most. And back then, classrooms would have one teacher with like 70 to 100, 5, 6, 7-year-olds in the classroom, and that would be very hard to manage. And media, I feel like is more on education side nowadays. Back then, media really bashed education for, taking children out of the workforce, and for teachers, just being radicalist union who just complained about everything. And corporal punishment is now frowned upon. Generally, teachers don't hit their children anymore, or hit their students anymore. And obviously, the child labor laws, you don't have 5 to 10-year-olds working in a factory. And you've got these kids who are modern kids playing outside, having fun, and as you can see here, we've got a couple of kids working in a factory. So obviously, home life is very different. The progress in education throughout the book. In the early 1900s, like when the book started off, teachers were given like warrants and promises of like getting paid better in the future, and like the education would be better soon, and they were just constantly fighting for it, but it was not getting anywhere. They were just getting promised. And then education began to take more of like a progressive form, and so instead of teachers just standing up here and like reading from a textbook that someone gave them, like might not even be an up-to-date textbook, they began to like get more unique and more individualized, and they were able to create like their own teaching units and their own lesson plans, like not as much like that we see nowadays, but that's kind of started to take place. And then during this time, the Chicago Teachers Federation was formed, and that again was a big advocator for higher teacher pay, and for teachers' freedom to develop their own lesson plans, because we all know that each class is different, each student's going to be different, and the teacher's going to know their students the best, so they should have the right to like develop their own lesson plans. And by the 1920s, student achievement was not only the only factor measured. So that's meaning that like tests didn't just measure student achievement. They started taking like creativity and stuff like that. And then a teacher's command of classroom discipline began to be assessed, along with the teacher's ability to control her own students. So that's like getting like an assistant teacher or more like discipline within the classroom, because like I said, it'd be hard to discipline 70 to 100 children, especially by yourself. And then in the 1920s, they started to do like IQ tests rather than the fearology, which is basically where a doctor would come up and like touch your head and say like, oh, you're gonna be good at this, oh, you're gonna be good at this, and it's a little freaky, like nobody wants a doctor touching their head, telling them what they're good at. And so they started like taking IQ tests and seeing like what they would achieve better at.
The views on teachers and education, like the work has seen as more important than education. As we said before, our kids were 5 to 10 years old and then working instead of going to school. Factory children viewed education as joyless places of bigotry, punishment, and mind-numbing memorization. So they didn't really enjoy school. Male teachers were seen as the solution to problems such as a class size or restless students. So female teachers, they were seen they couldn't like manage a classroom.
And then problems and solutions for our chapter. So the Chicago school system was really hard on the immigrant and poor children. they obviously didn't have the best grammar and vocabulary foundations for education, so it was really hard for them to learn in the class already, and the government was really pushing IQ tests to assess the students. And so the teachers during this time, really came together and fought for their students that didn't have that good background, didn't have that grammar. And so finally the teacher unions were able to resist the IQ determinations. And that was really, really powerful because those immigrant children obviously can't speak for themselves. They're young, they can't fight for themselves, and I think that's another thing as teachers, even now, we need to fight for our students when we see that maybe the system isn't really what it technically should be.
Ideas, children boycotting school because their teacher got suspended. So interviews with 500 child workers who thought of school as joyless and place for punishment. Union teachers triggering moral panic among the media by targeting high-profile stores in order to close shop. 415 people injured and 21 were killed. Female teachers complained to Harper about how much they got paid. Harper said, "You should be happy you got paid as much as my wife's maid." I don't even think I said like a poem. Flag wanted to train teachers as young as 13 to be able to teach in low-poverty schools. Argument that unionism makes females masculine, and too many factors can affect students' test scores, class size, and parent involvement. And rubrics started to measure more than student achievement. And research was done showing that Southern blacks were able to score higher in IQ tests after the war.
And those are just some ideas that we found interesting / controversial